Yeah,
And that's after the spies.
Yeah, so, I mean, what I've said before is the first breaking of the covenant is Exodus 32. The second breaking of the covenant is Numbers chapter 12, which you just quoted, where I'm killing all your children, or you're all going to die in this wilderness. So he does kill them, but he leaves the second generation. But this context here is when they broke his statutes, they rebelled against him in the wilderness. And then it says, then I will pour out my fury on them in the wilderness to consume them. Yes, you can say that it could be Numbers chapter 12, but when it talks about these commandments in verse 25 that were not good, what I see is, okay, well, I see the Levitical priest system not being a good system. What it was a temporary system that was only for a period of time, which also was called the law of Moses. That's why Galatians talks about that it was a schoolmaster to bring them to Christ, because they needed more laws and more teachings to get it, because they weren't getting it. But again, everything is just a point to Christ anyways, but in the narrative of the story, that's just how I see it. So I could use this chapter to prove that, but I wouldn't. This is not my first place I'd go to.
You would prove that God does things that are not good?
No, to talk about the law, because the reason you brought this up is because it's talking about the law of Moses, right? Or the laws of God in the Old Covenant. Yeah, see, I wouldn't. This is not my go-to passage to go to that at all. But this does.
How did you bring it up in reference then today, Stacey? I'm a little bit. How are you thinking you took it out of reference or context?
He was basically saying that all throughout that you live righteously by following the laws, statutes, and ordinances that God gives you. And because, he had said that, and then I just automatically remembered this verse, and I brought that up.
Gotcha.
Because he's resistant to salvation by grace.
Were you on earlier, Zach, when I mentioned about universalism kind of being a nice fit for after 70 AD?
I heard you say something about that. I would like to, I guess, if you can go deeper into a biblical, because I see universalism like being not so biblical based. It's more of it'd be nice if that's how God is.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a biblical argument for it. I haven't studied it enough to formulate my own, memory for the arguments, but there's probably, Matthew mentioned there's probably 100. I haven't seen that many, but I've probably seen 15 or 20 different verses that support it. But the idea that I was mentioning is that, there's nothing really written for after 70 AD, other than
what do you mean by that?
I mean, as far as description of time, we have the teachings, obviously, but there's no real description of what happens to those after 70 AD.
I'm confused. Like, what do you mean? Like, what happens, like, when you die? What happens?
Right. Things of that nature, or just even, things in general. There's no description of after 70 AD. So it seems like.
What do you do with the passages talking about the new covenant? Is that not something that goes past 70 AD?
Well, it doesn't describe what happens in that new covenant, though.
What do you mean?
You have a little bit, maybe at the most, like having children or houses, but there's not much description. There's no description of our time frame or a future time frame.
Oh, I definitely see a time frame.
You
I
have
take
one
like
verse that describes the things going on today.
Yeah,
What were you thinking?
like how I see it, like you have the ending of Isaiah that talks about in the new heavens and new earth, the people will go outside and see the worm that doesn't. Let me just read it real quick. Isaiah 66. The last verse says, "And they shall go out and look on the dead bodies of the men who have rebelled against me, for their worm shall not die, and the fire shall not be quenched, and they shall be an abhorrence to all flesh." And then that coincides with Revelation 22, that's in the new heavens and new earth, in the city, inside the gates. Or outside the gates is where you see, sin, the murderer, the fornicator, all that kind of stuff. So in that sense, it seems like if Christ is this city, if the new heavens and new earth is the new covenant, then outside of Christ in the world, you would see things that are not godly. And that's literally death. And that's what Isaiah just says, and that's what Revelation says. So that's one thing.
How do you make the jump from seeing dead bodies, which was definitely 70 AD, to
this
our
is the
time
new
frame?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Say that again.
I mean, how do you make the jump from them seeing new bodies to our time frame?
No, I don't think these dead bodies is like a literal dead bodies.
You don't
This
think
is
the carcasses was where it talks about the eagles gathered? You don't
no,
think that
they
was
wouldn't.
literally dead bodies?
The Christians were already gone when that happened. They weren't. The Christians weren't in that siege. They had already fled to Pella, according to the history.
I mean,
So they
according
didn't
to
see.
history, doesn't quite match up with what the Bible says, though.
What do you mean?
I mean, it says that the Christians. It says we're going to be persecuted as well.
Oh no, they were
over the saints.
They were. They did get persecuted, but the Christians fled Jerusalem. But you
don't think when they came back, you don't think there'd still be dead bodies there?
I don't even know if they went back. But I don't think Isaiah 66
talks about in that after 1,335 days, and it's okay to return.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if they did. I don't know if it says they had to return. But the main thing that I see is a more spiritual application, because when I say the new heavens and earth is the new covenant, so it's not contained in one place. It's not contained.
Well, I'm not saying that the new covenant. I'm just saying there's not specifics for us.
Yeah,
the new covenant, obviously.
Yeah, so I would say in the new covenant, anything that has to do with the new covenant pertains to us today.
Yeah,
so
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's no description of our time.
Yeah, I'm confused on that question. Like you mean like 2000, like the year 2011 or 2019 or whatever?
Right. There's nothing there's no description of that time frame.
You mean there's no like prophecy unfolding being fulfilled?
Well, not even prophecy, but yeah, prophecy could be one thing.
Yeah, I think prophecy according to Daniel ceased after the 70 weeks of Daniel. It says that's one of the elements of the, that prophecy in Daniel chapter 9 is the prophecy would cease. So, and like I said, I believe that once the new covenant was fully established after the destruction of the old covenant, that brought in this new heavens and new earth. And you look at Isaiah 66 and you read these things, it talks about that they'll be going outside. Or when you look out, what does it mean? And they shall go out and look at the dead bodies in the new heavens and new earth. Well, when you look in Revelation, it says, and outside the gates, well, what gate is it? Well, the gate is the city that came down, the New Jerusalem.
Are you familiar with Universalist verses at all?
Yeah, I think they're taken out of context, but because just like for example, let's just say you're right, and past
I'm not
70
saying I'm
AD.
right. I'm just
No,
saying
no,
let's
that's what I'm
talk
saying.
about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, let's just take that position. Let's just say, okay, yeah, after 70 AD, it's universalism,
Hmm.
right? So once the new covenant is established, everybody goes to heaven, and there's no more, like, I guess everybody just gets in. But it looks like to me, in the same passage that I'm looking at in Isaiah and Revelation, the context is after the new heavens and new earth has been established. So this is the new covenant, that outside of Christ, outside of the new covenant, is death, still sin. And it says
So
that their flesh, it says, like right here, it says, the fire shall not be quenched, and they shall be an abhorrence to all flesh. So, and it says, like, for their worm shall not die. So it's like,
yeah,
this
so they would
punishment is
argue that
forever.
that fire was the 70 AD, not an internal ongoing fire.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to match up more with that idea than eternal burning forever hellfire.
Yeah, no, I don't think that. I think the fire is eternal, but the thing is what's interesting is the wordage. See, this is after 70 AD. 70 AD is over. Now it's the new heavens and new earth is established, because the new heavens and new earth gets established after the destruction. So this is, so once the old covenant is completely shredded and burned in the fire, now you have a new birth.
Why do you think he said, I have 99 sheep, but I'm going to leave the 99 to go find the one?
That's a parable. That's not like
okay. How about this one then? For the grace of God bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men.
Yeah. The word all doesn't mean all the time, just like it says.
How about
like,
when Jesus was crucified on the cross, and he said, "Please forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Do you think he didn't hear that prayer?
Oh no, I believe those people could be saved for sure. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're, all going to be saved.
I'm just saying there's verses to be considered. I don't think we should just discount them just because we should talk about them.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. What I know,
I don't think
that
we've ever talked about universalism ever.
But Rob,
we've talked about it, but we've
many
never
times.
actually talked about the verses.
but Rob,
Many times, I can't remember one time.
Rob, you can have the thing about universalism. This what got me out of it really quickly. You have a lot of positive verses, like the ones you just read, but all you need is one negative. So, like, they shall never enter into his rest.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Do we
Like,
just need one negative? I mean, that's what we were just talking about with Stacy's verse.
Well, I mean, in my understanding, because like when we did talk, like when we went through the book of Romans,
and if those negatives aren't being future and they're talking about the 70 AD destruction, then maybe they're not negative.
Well, what I know with that one, because we did have a universalist on here. I forget his name, Doug or something like that.
Yeah,
and
but he
when
never
he
brought
spoke,
up any scriptures.
Oh, I remember a night we were on here for probably like 3 hours talking about it, and we went through all these scriptures. And what he said was that when you look at what Matthew just said, the negative verses about, they'll never, or they'll be consumed in the fire, that it's a time period. They're going to go to hell, or the lake of fire, but it's only for a period. So even if you're going to live for eternity, let's just say you're in this lake of fire for 10 million years. 10 million years is nothing compared to eternity. So they do say people that are not in Christ, they're going to go through this fire, and what's going to be burned is going to be the wood, the straw, the hay, and what's going to be left is the gold, what's pure, because Jesus Christ died for everybody. So they do say that these fire judgments are going to happen, but it's not forever. And then
but those are
futurists.
I'm going with a more full preterist view. So I mean, that's a whole different concept.
Yeah, that is. But
I mean, you're using a different argument than what I'm proposing.
Yeah, I just see that, like, the verse that I brought up is after 70 AD. So you're saying things before 70 AD. So after
I'm just
70
saying that
AD,
the fire and judgment was 70 AD. So we can't use those judgment type things maybe after 70. I mean, it may be possible. I'm Not saying it's right. I'm just saying we should look into it and not just discount it just so quick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you would interpret Isaiah 66 though,
As far as
because what in my view, what I'm laying out is according to Isaiah 66. This is after for the new heavens and the new earth that I make shall remain before me, says the Lord. So
Right.
shall your offspring. So at this moment, what God's talking about is the old heaven and the old earth are done. They're destroyed. They're already
Right.
gone. The new heavens and new earth is established. So
Right.
in my view, that's just the new covenant. The old covenant is done away with. The old heaven and old earth is the covenant. The new heavens and new earth is the new covenant. So in
But
this new
just because
covenant,
they're sinners doesn't mean they can't be saved in the new covenant.
what I'm trying to say is that you still see this death. They're not all saved yet. That there's still
but you're not
this
Universalism. No one's saved until you die.
Yeah. No, I
So I
get
don't
it,
see
but I
how
just
that would
see.
prevent that.
Well, then that would mean that this would be irrelevant because nobody's going to be dead. The worm's not going to consume them. Their flesh shall not be quenched. Like, that's not going to happen. That'll never happen.
No,
Because
I
you're going to be
believe
saved when you die.
that I believe that did happen.
See,
I believe that was literal.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. This seems like it's still into the new heavens and new earth.
When you say
Not-
Isaiah 66, or do you mean 56?
I'm saying Isaiah 66, verse 22, the new heavens and new earth is established. Verse 23 says, from one new moon to one new moon, from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come and worship me before the Lord, and they shall go out.
You would say that's today, one Sabbath to another.
Yeah, it just literally means week, month. It's just a saying that just means forever.
And new moon.
It's the word month. It's just from month to month, from week to week, all flesh shall come and worship me. So in Christ, it's an all-time access. The gates are freely open. You come in. It's just like we have to go to the new covenant and decipher what these words mean. And it's
it
just
seems like I mean, if you want to just discount it within a couple of verses, it just seems like you don't want to look into it at all.
No, I mean, like I said, it's not the first time I've ever heard of universalism, but what I'm trying to get you to just see my point is that you're saying Isaiah 66:24 is the 70 AD destruction, which I would agree, but it seems like this is going past that, and this is in the new heavens and new earth. So while the new heavens and new earth is established, this death, these dead people that are not in the new covenant are still there. They're outside the new covenant. So just like
it could be also
like
like
when you look
Revelation,
outside
where
to
it's
the
just
world.
looking at a flashback. It's not necessarily have to be in order, just like Revelation. It can be flashing back to events.
Well, what makes sense is because Revelation says literally the same thing.
Yeah, but Revelation also flashes back. It doesn't go in order.
Well, if you want to go to look at Revelation, and I don't see how that because the last chapter is not being it's not going through multiple different stages of the judgment or anything. I mean, it just says that Jesus is coming. And it says, blessed are the ones
I'm trying to
doing his
look at
commandment.
universalism, and then you're trying to do a whole different argument. So there's no way to look at it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. I mean, if you want to go over other scriptures, but okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if you don't want to go over them, that's fine. I was just trying to look at some of those universalisms so we could talk about that. But if you want to just shoot it down without even looking at it, that's fine.
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, I'll just let you speak then, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. It just seems like don't even want to talk about it because of this. But that's fine. Maybe we can talk about something different.
Talk about universalism, open theism.
What's that?
I'm just joking. Universal open theism. It's where everybody believes that God doesn't know the future.
I mean, we could talk about hopeful universalism, like Stacy believes in. Stacy already believes it, pretty much. She's hopeful for it. So, Stacy,
Yeah.
what are your problems like? Because I know you had always said that it makes. Is Stacy even still here? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I
Mhm.
know you had said, yeah, I can hear you. I know you said that you're hopeful because you see that scripturally it's not so sound in a sense, or I'm not sure how you put those words together, but that it makes sense like in a philosophical way, like God is loving,
Right.
he wasn't, but
Right.
when you look at like scriptural, like what seems to, like, I guess what's holding you back, I guess.
Well, there is mention of some destruction and stuff. So if you look at it, basically what you see is that if you go by the Bible and the Bible alone, and you don't try to carry it out logically or philosophically or God's attributes wise, then yeah, you can see destruction, you can see genocide, you can see all of these things. But for a universalist, they say, well, this is only the part of the story. So it's like a partial storyist, haha, because that's only part of the story. I mean, we don't get, after really redemption, we see a restoration. So if you go by the attributes of God, about his long suffering, the problem that I have of the non-universalist is they say, well, his long suffering has a limit. His patience has a limit. So here you have a limitless loving God, but yet you're placing limits on him by saying, nope, his cup of wrath will fill up and then he'll pour it out on mankind. And that's like the other tribes and nations when they would worship gods. They didn't always worship beneficial gods. They also worshiped evil gods because they felt that, they had to love and worship this evil god so that they would not bring destruction upon them. Moloch was one of them. So in modern Christianity, especially in the Reformed areas, that's what I see. I see a, bastardization of God's name. So I'm always going to have that hopeful streak within me because outside of the Bible, philosophically, logically, it doesn't make sense for him not to be a universalist.
One of the things a universalist has to do is they have to take the words olam and ionios and only relegate them to a period of time. That's their main argument. So if there's a resurrection, whatever you believe about the resurrection, if there's a resurrection of the just and the unjust, a resurrection, one to everlasting life, one to everlasting destruction, the everlasting destruction in their mind becomes ionios destruction, which doesn't really mean for everlasting destruction. It just means for a period of time.
Yeah, everlasting meaning it'll last as long as it lasts.
Right.
So
In other
like,
words, there's no set time.
so you're mentioning about death, right, Zach? So in like Romans
Yeah.
5:12 through 21, you're probably familiar with those verses
Mm-hmm.
where it talks about death reigned from Adam to Moses.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So after Jesus, then death didn't reign, but you're saying death still does reign in the new covenant, it seems like.
Well, it depends on what kind of death was introduced by Adam, I'd say, but yeah, I remember. I think if you just read Romans chapter 5, I mean, it seems super universalist. That's when I actually think when we went through the book of Romans, I remember because, when I was reading that, Stacy was like, wow, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And then like a couple of days later, that guy Doug came on and it was just like, wow, how crazy. We were just talking about this stuff and here's this guy talking about the same stuff. But
Like, what death do you think Adam had then?
separation.
And then after Jesus?
Well, I have a way to, I guess, exegete it out and say, that universalism is not true through Romans chapter 5. But, if you just look at it on the surface value, yeah, it definitely seems, you have everybody that's born in Adam's going to die. But then Jesus Christ comes, so everybody that, so it says for, even as in Romans 5:12, even as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, so also death passed to all men, as much as all sinned. For sin was not in the world until the law, but sin is not charged where there is no instruction. Yet death reigned from Adam until Moses, even over those who had not sinned, after the likeness of the transgression of the law by Adam, who was a type of him who was to come. But the free gift is not also like the offense. For if by the offense of the one the many died, how much more the grace of the gift of God, because of the one man Jesus Christ, be increased for many. And then verse 16, it says, and the effect of the gift of God was greater than the effect of the offense of Adam. For while the judgment of one man's offense resulted in the condemnation of many, but the free gift of God in the forgiveness of sins resulted in justification for the many more. For if by the offense of the one from one death reigned through the one, much more those who receiving the abundance of the grace of the gift of righteousness shall rule in life by this one Jesus Christ. Therefore, as on account of the offense of one, condemnation was to all men, so on the account of the righteousness of one will the victory unto life be to all men. So like that, especially verse 18 seems like, yeah, universalism for sure. Adam sinned, everybody dies. Christ wins through his victory, everybody has life. Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying it would be an argument for it. So
For sure. Definitely.
This definitely seems like it should be something considered. Is it true or not? I don't know. It just seems like we should maybe try to figure it out a little bit more.
Yeah, like the one thing that when I was looking through this, like, is I did, I was looking at this for a while when I first saw it. But verse 17 always, like, it seemed interesting. Verse 17 says, for if by the one man trespasses, death reigned through that one man, much more those who receive the abundance of grace and the free gift of righteousness reign in life through the one man. So it seems like you have two groups. You have Adam, obviously, where he sinned and everybody has death. And you have Christ, and everybody in Christ has life. So when you look at verse 17, it's talking about much more will those who receive the abundance of grace. So who are the people that are receiving the abundance of grace? Is it every human being ever, or is it people that believe in Jesus Christ? So like when you take the whole book of Romans,
doesn't it say every knee will bow though?
It does, but does it mean to just
So
say
at one point in time, it seems like everyone may believe in Christ, whether it be now or after they die.
Yeah, but that everyone could be relegated to the people alive at that time. Everyone at that time, everyone. It doesn't mean everyone who ever lived. You'd have to add that to it. You know what I mean? You'd have to add that thought to it. It's a nice thought.
What do you think? How do we know? Because
Well, look what Jesus says in John 3:16 and following. I mean, he goes, you know, whoever believes in him is not condemned, but he who does not believe is condemned already. So you have the opposites there. You know,
Yeah, so
eternal life and an eternal destruction, perishing.
Because it says every knee in heaven, earth, and under the earth. So it seems to me that the time is all time.
I would say the under the earth would be delegated to, Sheol. I don't believe that Sheol exists anymore. So for me, then
Well,
that period of time.
that could be at one point in time, but then
Yeah.
what about in heaven and on earth? It seems that includes all time to me, possibly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying.
No, I mean that one verse. I mean, yeah, definitely take that one verse for sure. But then you look at like, does it really mean like all you have to do is just like, just say some stuff and just, oh yeah, I believe. I mean,
I'm
like,
just saying that,
it's,
not only, do you have to say something, believe in Jesus, but should we not be looking at, okay, I'm a Christian. Okay, I'm saved. Okay, well, you're not saved. When you adopt a universalist view, you look at your brother or sister or your non-brother and sister in a more loving way than when you think, well, some are saved and some aren't.
I mean, but
you know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, for sure. But now, does that give the right, like, so I guess when you look at the world through that lens, does that
Right. It's
mean
definitely
that,
a lens or filter for sure.
yeah, like a worldview that you look at, doesn't matter what religion you do, doesn't matter what you practice, me and you are going to end up in the same place.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's true or not, because I mean, when you look at the parable of the wedding feast, it seems like it's not true. So but you know what I'm talking about? Because it's,
yeah, you don't have the right garment on.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so if you're not covered by the blood of Christ, you get kicked out. I mean, there's so much.
Go ahead.
There's like especially the book of Romans, like the justification, even in Romans chapter 5, the very first verse says, therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. Then look at verse 9. Much more than being justified now by his blood, we shall be delivered from the wrath through him. So
yeah, but what wrath was that though?
Yeah, that could be the coming wrath, or that could just be, that you were once going to die into the lake of fire, but now that you're in Christ, you pass from life, you pass from death into life.
Was destroyed in Revelation.
The lake of fire is what's eternal.
Or death was thrown into the lake of fire.
Yeah, death and the grave, Sheol,
right.
Hades. So the lake of fire seems to go beyond. That's like eternal. The lake of fire is like there's no end. But yeah, like Matthew, do you see like verse 5 where it talks about like therefore being justified by faith? So there's like the main element is faith in Christ by the blood. Verse 9, that's your ticket.
That's the contingency, right?
Yeah, that's the word I wanted. Contingency. That's literally it. It's you either have faith, and like you brought up John chapter 3. For God so loved the world that he did not give his only son, but terribly quoting it, but and then he says
if you
for
don't,
God did not
you're
send.
condemned.
Yeah, so they're already condemned already. For the light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than the light, for their works were evil. Yeah, so I'm going to just read it. It says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world, And people love darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his work should be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes to the light, so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out by God. So it definitely seems that, this faith, this belief is the contingency on eternal life
eternal life.
versus,
Where are you
or
at?
condemnation.
Which
John,
scripture, Zach?
like, this is like the most famous verse, John 3:16. But
But
what's
look,
interesting is the verses after.
Right.
yeah, but the verse after, you're right, is super important. But you got to start with the 16 itself, because there's the dichotomy. It's everlasting life versus perishing.
Condemning and all that kind of stuff.
So if everlasting life is what you get by believing, then what do you get by not believing? You perish. You see what I mean? You can't add in perishing, but temporarily perishing. Eventually,
Where do you see perish?
3:16.
Well, it says not perish, so it doesn't say they perish.
Yeah,
But if everybody's going to have eternal life, then it's kind of who's the one that's going to be perishing.
Matthew's argument is that there's perishing, but it's not necessarily implied. It could be that you're getting eternal punishment.
I mean, it could be whatever the lake of fire is. I mean, you could debate, is it eternal conscious torment, or is it, a complete annihilationism? But regardless, there's a lake of fire. And
but
how
I get what
I'm getting there.
I get what you're saying about, if some don't perish, then it's implied that some do perish. I get where you're coming from, Matthew.
of course. I mean, that's what it's saying, even though it doesn't have to say whoever doesn't believe will perish. It's more than implied, because whoever believes should not perish, but have everlasting life. That means the everlasting life is meaningless if the ones who don't believe don't perish. What is the point of the everlasting life in that case?
So you would say that's the second death, they perish then.
I don't have to
basically go to oblivion or annihilation.
To me,
whatever it is.
Perishes the opposite of everlasting life. It's everlasting destruction, which is what the two resurrections are about. Everlasting.
I mean, in a sense, that's still universalism in a sense, because I mean, you're getting a graceful exit.
Well, if you're going to define universalism, but universalism defined is eternal life for all.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of redefining it by doing that for sure. But I mean, if that is the case, that universalism isn't true, and we're, definitely everyone has to believe and have faith, then really, I think full preterism, the everlasting gospel, like mentioned in Revelation 14, I think it would be our duty to share that message with others and not just let it, because it seems like it says that not everyone will have to teach in the new covenant. That it's just naturally God does all the work. If God wants someone saved, he'll get them saved. We have no duty then, or do we have duty?
Another aspect of this argument. Most of us here are non-eternal conscious torment believers.
Right.
That's huge to this argument, because think of all the Christians in the world that believe that God's going to torture people forever.
Right.
Now, the universalist argument becomes pretty important, more important, because if you believe in eternal conscious torment and you're not a universalist, then you believe most of humanity is going to be burning forever, which is pretty
right.
But
they're almost the two opposite views, obviously.
But if you believe that people are just going to perish, meaning they're just going to cease to exist, then you can understand why God is not a universalist, because he gives them the contingency of believing for eternal life. And if you don't have it, you perish. You don't.
Yeah, but what about our duty, though? Do we still have a duty to share the message and try to convert people? Or
Absolutely.
Yeah, I believe that as well.
Yeah. If universalism is true, then that commission doesn't seem so important.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's like the whole thing is to, like, why wouldn't we want to tell people? It's not like you need to go out there and, like, it's like, how can I say, there's some people that like, oh, I got to go move to Africa.
Open air preaching, yeah.
Yeah, just got to tell everybody,
story.
just scream. But it's just, obviously everybody has a worldview.
It seems like the easiest time, obviously, as a parent, to introduce that to your children. But some people definitely leave the faith for some odd reason.
Universalists also believe that you're commissioned to do that, but it's to save you a lot of pain and anguish
Mm-hmm.
from your purification process.
Yeah, I guess if you're a Christian now, it's better to be a Christian now than, have to go through the fire longer, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much just like purgatory.
I know you've shared, or talked about the Bible with other people at work and stuff, Zach, but have you ever met someone that, like, never heard of Jesus and, like, you, like, introduced them to the Bible?
Not nobody that's, like, never heard of God before, no. Like Jesus and the Christian God.
That's why I wonder if, when it talks about those verses, like, the ones I'm talking about where it says no man will need to teach anymore.
Yeah, that's Jeremiah 31.
If God has established a method all of his own beyond his need for us to establish that everlasting gospel, or if we have to play a part in that.
Yeah, I mean, I know people use that verse also in the same breath. Like, they'll be like, oh, the new covenant hasn't happened yet. Because, like, me coming from the Hebrew roots, I used to think that Jeremiah 31 has not yet happened, because it says, no more your neighbor, you're going to have to say or teach, saying, know the Lord, for all shall know me from the least unto the greatest. But it's really just knowing the Lord, and we know the Lord through Christ. So now we, like what it says in Matthew chapter 5 and things like that, we're not supposed to hide our light. We're supposed to, like, shine the light so people can see it. That's like the biggest thing you can do. I mean, it's just, because everybody has a worldview and how they view everything. I mean, if we don't, like, stand up for what we believe in, because that's what they do. The world is pretty much against, because, the flesh is against the spirit.
Yeah, I heard a couple of things recently by Einstein, a couple of things he had to say. One was you have two major decisions in life, basically. One, to see everything as, like, everyone's, I'm taking this out of saying it a little bit different, but one I've got right. He said to look at everything as a miracle or not a miracle, or to look at it as a hopeful world, or to look at it like everyone's out to do the wrong thing. You have that choice in life to how you see the world, and that's the most important choice you make in life. Obviously, I don't think he was a believer in Christ, but I think he had some valid points there. It's kind of like with full preterism, people want to say there's doom and gloom, but you have that choice to look at the positive or the negative.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. I mean,
just but even with full preterism, and like you say, and having the sinner be here always,
Say that last part again.
With the sinner always being here in the future, I wonder if it, how utopian life can get potentially.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have listened to any of the debates and stuff that, American, the Democratic debate or whatever. There's like some type of town hall or something.
Yeah, I watched one of them.
Well, recently, I listened to Ben Shapiro today and another commentary. And also James White posted something on Facebook, and it was about the guy like Beto O'Rourke or something like that. How like he was asked like, would he get rid of like tax exemptions and things from like that from churches and school and religious schools that I guess they're saying discriminate against gay marriage. And pretty much what like James White and what Ben Shapiro was saying, that opening the door is going to lead to churches getting completely shut down, universities, like for example, like the school I go to, they would either have to start teaching about gay marriage and doing anything, or they would get shut down and or not be accredited school anymore. And all these other private religious schools, they would no longer be, they'd just be shut down. And
it's
so
not necessarily I don't know if it's necessarily a bad or good thing, because when you think about it, things just kind of web and flow over time and things disappear. We might be just in the time where we're having to deal with it, but in the future, maybe those things will get a little better and make more sense, whether more on a Christian traditional value type system.
Yeah, I always tell my other brother, because he's all into politics and stuff, I'm always like, you know what, I'm pretty sure in Americans' history, we're going to look back 50 years from now and be like, hey, let's just forget that last time period, when we were talking about, what bathrooms to use and what pronouns you're supposed to use.
Right. That's what I mean. It may just be a phase that just passes like anything else.
Yeah, it's
it's
very fascinating.
Well, maybe I shouldn't say unfortunate, but it's because I think it is bringing some equal rights to thing, but then also I think I think in America you have freedom and choice, and I think you have to put that over the Bible per se in America. I do think Obama was right on that, but I do think America is also based off Christian values, so it's a tough line to walk. But I also think they're that's a minority group, but just because they're a minority doesn't mean that they should be you have freedom of choice basically. So
yeah, but the problem is they don't want that though. It's like, yeah, the churches say, if you want to get married, go to the courthouse. Just don't say you want to get married at my church. But they're like, no, you're being racist and you're being a bigot. We want to get married in your church.
That is kind of weird. Why would you want to get married where you're not really welcome?
Yeah, the thing is, it's so hypocritical. They're talking about it's supposed to be like accepting, and you're not supposed to be prejudiced. But
right,
if I go to them,
it's not a two-way street.
Yeah, but to me, they're offending me. They're segregating me. They're saying that I can't have what I believe in, but you get to have what you believe in.
Well, it's kind of like Boy Scout. Now it's not Boy Scout anymore, is it?
No, you could be a girl and be a Boy Scout.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it seems like we've kind of lost our identity, and then we're just searching for our identity a little bit, whatever that is, as an American or globalist or individual.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty bizarre.
For sure. But I think everyone now is or not everyone, but most adults have some type of friend or relative that is into non-traditional values.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if it's any greater or lower than it has been in other times. Are we just like I say, a web and flow of, it's like a hairstyle or haircut, or clothing, what's in fashion or what's trendy, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, there's ever more, time period for us to stand up, for, belief. Because I used to really be like, oh man, government, we shouldn't even get involved, because it's all going to be burned up anyways. Jesus is going to come back and just destroy it all. But now, like with the preterism and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, well, wait a second. Actually, now we actually have the power to have a voice. Think about it. If such a small minority, the LGBT community, is a minority in our country, when how many Christians are there? Just imagine if the Christians were to lobby the way that they are and to be out there just as much as they are.
I think maybe Christians are more tolerant, like you were saying.
Yeah, no, for sure. But it seems like there's going to come to a time where it's going to be a pushback, because if the government, like, for example, like, I mean, I don't think that, Beto O'Rourke or the people are going to win, this upcoming election anyways. I mean,
you think Trump will win again?
I mean, I hope so, but it just seems like the way that the Democratic Party is going, it's going so, like, to the left, where it's just like,
yeah, it seems like they want everything to be free, but it just doesn't work that way.
I mean, that's the one thing, but the other thing is like this religious thing, and you got to listen to what was said the other day, like by these candidates, like they're like full blown, like Ben Shapiro was saying, like, he's like, oh, I've been saying this for years now, that this is the true belief of the Democratic, but they've just never had anybody brave enough to say it. But now you have this guy, Beto O'Rourke, that says, yeah, if you don't accept, because he's equating when churches don't allow gay marriage, that's the same thing that whites did to black people in the slave times. Like, you're segregating them. Oh, you can't eat at this restaurant because you're black.
I mean, they do have a valid point, into that, but then they're also not respecting other freedom of belief and freedom of religion as well, which
and that's the First Amendment. Yeah. I mean,
it'd be like if a Christian went to a Muslim synagogue and they started like, you must believe in Jesus. And I'm sure there's probably people who have done that before, but it's also disturbing the peace. And so if you're having those two conflicting views, there does need to be some laws in place, like you said.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's crazy.
But you can't write a law for everything. There has to be some moral within to treat people like. Did you see the thing with Ellen DeGeneres this last week?
What happened?
So Ellen DeGeneres was hanging out with George Bush, who's has traditional Christian values, they would say, and so people were mad at Ellen DeGeneres, her followers, for saying, how could you hang out with a Christian and like George Bush, who doesn't believe in gay rights? And she's like, well, I have lots of friends that don't believe the same way I do, but that doesn't mean that I can't be friends with them. She's like, I think we should treat everyone equally. So she's doing more of the two-way street, where some individuals that in the LGBT community were mad at her because she had went both ways. She's saying I should be kind to everyone
because they have no tolerance. They preach tolerance, but they have no tolerance themselves.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a great message for Ellen DeGeneres, and hopefully that will spread in the, on
Yeah.
both sides of the community.
I mean, that's the same thing like Jesus. Jesus ate with sinners. Jesus literally went to those people that were marginalized by the religious leaders and, the fishermen. He made those his disciples. But the thing is, it's like now you have these people, like exactly what Stacey said. These people want you to be, pretty
Yeah, but
much
they
you can't
could say
believe in
that.
anything anymore.
They could say the same thing about right wing Christians too, like those what's that one group out of Kansas or whatever, where they protest at funerals and things of that
Yeah.
nature. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you kind of got both sides, but
Yeah, of course.
the
If you,
Christians are more of a minority than the LGBT minority.
yeah, I mean, of
And
course. There's always the extreme. And of
right.
course, you don't have a lot of people like, for example, Ellen DeGeneres, like what you just said. Yeah, that's the more middle ground. She's not going extreme. But the
Right.
problem is you're getting these far extreme, left people that are running for president. They think, Trump is Hitler. They
Right.
think
Yeah. It
Trump is the
seems like
farthest right you can get, but he's far from it.
yeah, it's definitely the times we're in right now are very divisive.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird that the mentality can be that far different in human aspect. You'd think we'd be more in line with one another, but we all think very differently for some odd reason.
We would be if there wasn't a bunch of brainwashing going on. Because that's why
A lot of media.
a lot of media and false information. If there wasn't false information, I think everybody would be closer to the same thought.
Well, yeah, I mean, you definitely bring up a good point because the media really started like in the 70s and 80s, and things have really changed in my lifetime. I'm sure you guys have all seen that too, Stacy and Matthew especially. I'm sure you've seen some of that as
Yeah.
well, Zach.
I mean, and what's crazy is like what Ben Shapiro is even saying is how the left media, how they're like utilizing children to push their agenda. And when you say, like, for example, let's just talk about gay marriage. When there was this transgendered girl that's transitioning to a boy or whatever, was saying like to one of the president candidates, like, they're like, okay, I'm a transgender, whatever, what are you going to do to help me, live my life, whatever. And pretty much when they have this child say that, now you being somebody that's a conservative that says, no, I believe that boys should use boy changing in locker rooms in school and girls should use girls. Now you're going against this child. You bigot. Like, oh my
Right.
God.
They're setting you up for to look bad from the get-go.
Yeah, because they have this little innocent little child. So now when you say, oh, I disagree with you, child, you're like, oh my gosh. You hate this child.
What was that girl that everyone was putting on social media the other day about like global
Yeah,
warming or something? Is that what it
yeah.
was? Or
That's another young girl that, this girl actually has like a mental, disability. She has like
really?
Asperger's or something. And the
Okay.
media is telling this girl that we're all going to die. So she's freaking out thinking that we're actually in a time of that, we're in a mass extinction, the girl says. But it's like, no, we're not. National
Okay, so
disasters have
she's got a
actually,
disability and she's getting taken advantage of.
exactly. And people are actually saying that this is child abuse.
Gotcha. I wasn't sure
Because,
where that was coming from, but it's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, she'll say, I was listening to something now. She was saying how, the national disasters are like so rampant and everything like that. And like the statistics show that actually less people die from national disasters than ever before because of the technologies that we have and things like that.
Does
We're
anyone
able
here
to track that kind of stuff.
does anyone here have interest in getting into politics?
Yeah, vote for me. I'll set you free. Now, I actually, when I was in high school and I had economics, I really fell in love with it, and I wanted to be like a House representative. But that changed really quickly when I graduated high school. But I did really like it though. But I don't. No, I wouldn't. No. I like talking about it though. I like talking about politics and religion. The two topics that people say you never should talk about.
I'd kind of like to run for the old chief of office, but I don't know if I've got the wisdom to make that happen. Maybe got common sense and kindness, but it might take a lot more, especially with world politics and remembering all the different names. But
all the lies that you've told.
I don't think they'd have to. I don't think they'd have to do too much, as far as like digging. But then I think once you run for president, they run smear campaigns that things about you that never even happened, that they try to make you look bad. And
oh yeah, they'll pull up.
So that
they'll pull
even
up
if
something
it's not
you
true.
said. Yeah, true. I mean, they'll pull up
they'll
something
say
you did
had
when
a
you were a teenager.
Well, I got no problem with that. I can confess to all that. I don't think anybody's gonna hold anything against me for that. But
they do nowadays. Brett Kavanaugh, the guy that was running for Supreme Court justice, they were like, "Oh, you're about to get sworn into office. Oh, by the way, when you were in college, some girl said you raped him."
Yeah, I mean, if you had something like that, then maybe they would do anything. But I don't have to have anything like that. I don't think so. That would worry about that. But so I mean, I wouldn't worry about anything being brought up from my past. I would more just having to deal with things they make up, literally like some girl that you never even met type thing, that type of smearing.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm not worried about my past, but I'm not sure I have the wisdom when it comes to world politics.
Have you ever taken any like classes on that kind of stuff, like economics or world government or whatever?
I've taken economics and business, but I haven't taken like world poli-sci or something like that. So, I haven't taken very many governmental. I know a lot of.
Have you ever had like a national television show?
A national television show
like Trump did,
like Oprah?
No, I mean, yeah, that too. I mean, Trump, what did he have? You're fired.
Right, I got to get my own national show. Well, that worked for Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah, it seems like it worked for what's his name, California Governor Schwarzenegger too.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
It worked for
Trump.
Trump and what's the wrestler, Jesse Ventura. So,
I'm not sure.
If you're famous, it definitely can get you into politics.
It helps. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Now, what's funny
I am not famous. I have 800 followers. So
no, you're very famous. But what's funny is I went to my uncle's house for the Jewish holiday Yom Kippur, and so I'm sitting here on the back porch, and I'm talking to this guy, and he's a family friend. I've known him for a very long time, and we start talking. He starts talking about my cousin. My cousin lives in D.C. and works in some type of something in politics or whatever. And he always jokes around, and he's always like, "Oh, so if your cousin Michael runs for president, you're gonna vote for him?" And I'm like, "Well," and he's like, "You better vote for him. That's your cousin." And I'm like, "I know, but the thing is we've always debated on so many topics." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, "Well, for example, abortion." And I'm like, "I don't believe that abortion. I think it should be illegal. I think that's terrible." And the first thing he says is, "Well, what about a woman that gets raped?" And I'm like, well, I mean, that's such a super small minority. So, you know, I
Well, I
mean,
don't know
let's
if it's
just,
that small of a minority, because I think 1 out of 4 or 5 women claim or believe to be raped. I mean, if they believe they've been raped, and then,
well,
so I don't think it,
there's 3,000 abortions that happen every day in America.
oh,
And
you're just saying out of them.
yeah, out of abortion. So out of all the
Mm,
abortions that are done, you're
mm-hmm.
talking about 0.001% of
That would
women,
be rape
yeah,
cases.
saying I want an abortion because I got raped and I have the rapist's child in me.
Right.
So let's just say, for argument's sake, that's what I told him. I said, okay, let's just say, because in reality, when somebody says that, they really don't want to have they want women's choice all the way. They just
So you're
use that.
basically saying that a woman could just say, I was raped, and still get an abortion if you allowed that law.
I mean, maybe, but all I'm trying to get the guy to say is, okay, the biggest thing is that baby a human? Is that an actual baby? Or is it just
Well,
a
I don't think
bundle
they
of
care if it's
cells?
a baby or not. I don't think they really care.
No, well, they say now that it's not a baby, so that's why it's okay to
Yeah, it's just
kill it.
because they don't care.
Yeah, of course. So, and that's like, that was one of the things that I'm telling the guy. I'm like, it's, you know, the abortion is this is murder, and it's not just some random thing. And I even told him, I said, I have a friend of mine that was born through a rape. So does he not have any life? Is his life worthless? Should he just be killed? So there's
Well, I
so
mean, I
many.
think that we're making progress on the abortion ground, don't you?
I mean, last year they legalized, or I think this year actually, yeah, they like multiple states made it full-term baby abortions.
I thought
You
it was
could
more
be
the other way.
no Alabama, and I think Georgia did something. Georgia and Alabama, I know Alabama passed a law that banned abortions or something like that, made them illegal. And then I know Georgia did something, but I'm not sure if it actually passed, because something about Disney. I think Disney or some really huge company is based in or does something
Okay,
in
so
Georgia or
here's some
something.
statistics for you. In 1996, 1,360,000 abortions. And then it's continually went down ever since then. So it's getting better.
You want to know something fascinating? How many people do you think die every day in the world?
In the world,
Mm-hmm.
and there's 8 billion people, I would say every day,
Google it. Say,
5 million people.
Google it. How many deaths happen occur each day? The death rate is about 151,000 people die every day. And then, like if I just type on Google, how many deaths occur each day, and it actually has the birth rate and the death rate. So there's 360,000 babies that are born each day, and there's
Right.
151,600 people die each day, right? So what's crazy is Google how many abortions happen each day in the world.
So they're not saying abortion's not included in the deaths?
Nope. Go Google how many abortions happen every day.
Because it would raise the death toll up tremendously, so they don't want to do that.
It says 125,000 abortions per day. So you
So we're
have
is the 151,000 included in that though?
no.
How do you know?
I mean, go Look at it.
Well, it just says 151,000. If 125,000 are abortions, and then there's another 25,000.
That would mean that there's only 25,000 people die every day from other causes.
Right.
Let's see what happens. What are the statistics of the death rates? What type of deaths are happening?
You think they'd have like an asterisk or something like on it, but it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I don't think the abortions are, because they don't really call that a death.
Probably not included, but if there's 3, that'd be
So here,
270. That'd be 275,000 roughly versus 360,000 births per day. So we'd still be growing, but I mean that's
but what's crazy is they
almost
don't
equal the people that just die of whatever death.
Yeah, but what's crazy is that they don't even count the abortion with the death rate.
Right.
Because they don't
that almost
see,
doubles it.
Yeah, they don't see it as death. They don't see it as murder. They see it as, it's like when you pick a scab off your arm.
I
That's
don't think
what's
they
taught.
see it quite that way. I just think
No,
they're
that's what
like, it's not their personal decision until it actually happens to them. It's kind of like when my son came along, I thought, I thought that might enter my son's mom mind, when we found out she was pregnant. So instead of being happy and joyous about it, because I thought like, she might like rebel a little bit, I kind of played it like, oh, okay, we're pregnant, but I was secretly very happy. But I just try to play like she calls it a poker face. You didn't act like when you found out, you didn't act like one way or the other. I played it. I used my poker hand dealing days to because I was afraid that
Yeah,
and
no, for sure.
it even came up a little bit, but fortunately it didn't, and it just worked out great. So
and you know what's crazy? And you know what's crazy is that like in America right now, if your wife got pregnant, she can go have an abortion, and you can say nothing about it.
Yeah, I do think that is messed up, but she is the one carrying the baby, so but
Yeah, but think about this.
It is messed up.
Think about this, right? Let's just say you're the husband that wants the baby, and she doesn't. She can kill it.
Right.
End of story. Now let's just say, let's reverse the roles. The wife wants the baby. The husband doesn't want the baby. The baby daddy that doesn't pay child support gets, fined, gets his wages held, and can go to prison.
Right.
For not paying child support. So it's just like, well, wait a second. How crazy is that? I mean, it's not crazy. I mean, that's good. You should pay child support. But I'm just saying, like, look at the, whatever the woman wants. It's like,
right.
It should be that life. It's, according to the American way, is that there is an alienated rights.
I think we're looking at maybe the problem the wrong way, and I'll give you where I'm coming from on this. Okay, abortion. That is the symptom. It's not the cause. What would you say the cause would be?
They're haters of God.
No, the cause would be sex outside of marriage.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to address the abortion issue, maybe try addressing having marriage, you know what I mean, being
Yeah, of course.
would be a step, not the final step, but would be
Mhm.
maybe a solution or a guidance. You know, I know people are definitely talking that way in the church and, you know, hoping for that, but, you know, teenagers have a lot of hormones.
Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely 100% truth. The problem really is it's that is the main cause. The abortion is just a way out,
Right.
you know. But the problem is we're making it, you know, we're saying, oh, it's okay, sleep around, and guess what? When you get pregnant, don't worry about it, just kill it.
Well, I think people more sleep around now than they did in the past, or do you think it's just
Oh, I
more in the
think,
limelight?
um, I don't
Because I
know
mean, now
if
you
it's
have like
more.
because I think it's more just with like Tinder, Facebook dating, and all the social dating. You know, people like. I think there's
Yeah,
more of the hookup society than there ever
yeah,
was.
yeah. I could
I
agree,
mean,
especially in our history, in our American, for sure.
mhm. I mean, before with media, you didn't see like, uh, you know, Playboy was a new thing, Penthouse, you know,
Yeah,
just the sexual revolution of what was it, the 60s or 70s,
yeah,
you
one of
know.
those. Yeah, no, I would agree. Yeah, that definitely. You know, and just look. I mean, dude, if I live in South Florida, I mean, you don't even need to go to those things. It's crazy, man.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
literally today,
I mean, even if you look at
I'm
a picture of
driving.
South Florida 30 years ago, it's way different than you see today.
And I mean, it's just a society. I mean, it's okay now. Like what I was gonna say is, I was driving home today, and there was this girl walking her dog, and this girl is the shorts she's wearing. It's like she's wearing underwear,
Right.
and you're like, I mean, okay,
Well, that would go for men though. Men do that too. The bodybuilder at the beach. You
yeah, no,
know, the
they should.
girl would be lusting after a guy like that maybe too.
Yeah, no, it goes both ways for sure. But I do feel that men definitely are more prone to that type of
Uh, I don't know.
looking.
I think women would say that they look just as much.
Yeah, I mean, that is true, but I don't know. I definitely feel that, you know, I don't know.
But I've heard that before. Even women are like more attracted to women than men sometimes. So you might be right.
I mean, it's just a craziness, but it's just like, you know, you're talking about. It started from all this, you know, Playboy stuff, and then that gets into the movies. Now you watch movies that are PG-13, and it's just like, instead of showing the sex scene, they have the guy like go in the room, make out, the shirts come off, and then the scene ends. But you obviously know what just happened.
Right.
You know, it's not like you're really hiding it.
Hmm. Yeah. I
So
mean,
it's like,
even PG-13, even you know, PG-13 used to be R, you know, not that long ago.
yeah, you go watch. Yeah, now movies are they're what is it? It's not even rated. They're like, I forget the term, but it's like there's not even a
Where you have
rating
to
on it.
be 17 and older. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like rated R. It's like above rated R.
Right.
I forget the terminology
Yeah.
that
I think,
it's used,
yeah, I can't remember how old you have to be for them.
but it's like,
Yeah. But I mean, what do you do about it? You know, I mean, you're kind of going down that, you know, you want more and you want more. And then uh, you know, once you open that Pandora's box to whatever it is that's not traditional or biblical standards, uh, you know, how do you take something away from someone once you've given it to them? You know what I mean?
no, agreed. That is true. I mean, I don't know. It's definitely pretty deep, though. It's
Yeah, I don't think there's any easy solution or you know, why would someone want to choose the Bible over all these things and opportunities and choices they have?
Yeah, they think it's, they say that the Bible is restricting. In a sense, it it's like I had a report to do a couple weeks ago that was, it was supposed like you have a secular friend, and you're trying to talk to them about the Christian faith, but they say that they have a problem, and this was what the thesis was about, was that that Christians are too judgmental, and B, that Christians and their sexual ethics, they like suppress the natural urges, and in a sense, yeah, it's like,
I
a
think
man just wants to go around and sleep around.
Jimmy Carter would disagree with that, I think.
What would he say?
I think he's wrote a whole book on sex, hasn't he? Inside a Marriage, though.
I'm not even sure who it is, to be honest, but
Jimmy Carter, former president, I think in the 70s. He fell down the other day. Who was in the news, and I think he's like 95, and he's still out there building houses for humanity.
Oh wow. But I mean, like, for example, like the world will say, oh, it's okay to sleep, like especially with a boyfriend and girlfriend, like it is the norm to sleep with your girl, like, I mean, first date, you're sleeping with them, then all of a sudden you're, I mean, you're living with them before you get married, and that's just the norm. Or you're sleeping around with other people, or you're experimenting with the same sex, or whatever, and because you have those urges. So in this writing assignment that I had to do was, well, why should I follow your Christian God if my natural body instincts are telling me that this is good? That I want to sleep with this guy, and I'm a guy that I should, because it's an urge that I have, and urges are natural instincts to something that's good. So, but Christianity.
How did your paper go then?
I mean, I pretty much was just writing about, like, I agreed, and I said, yeah, that Christians do have a sense they are lower, or their ethics are not the same as the world, pretty much. But there's a standard that we believe that, for and foremost, that Christianity, a marriage, having sex, is for the sole purpose of procreation. It's to have other children. That's why men are, like, across the board, majority by far, men are attracted to women, and women are attracted to men.
Like, I think it's definitely important to, convey to kids. I mean, we're battling, what do they teach in school? Sex education, right? We're battling sex education, but if you don't go to church, I don't think the church is doing a good job really teaching about how that spiritual concept sexual is. It's more than just a physical connection, and I don't think the church is doing a good job explaining.
No, I would agree too.
And sharing, because I didn't grow up in the church, and I didn't realize how spiritual sexual connection is, and how that changes, and how people know, they're familiar that your heart's going to get broken, but they don't understand what heartbroken happens until that actually happens to them, and then it's too late, whether it's abortion or sex outside marriage. Then you're splitting up and separated families. But even the people that get married, I don't think the church is doing a good job letting them even know that what such a spiritual connection there is. But maybe it's something that can't be explained. I don't know, and so we battle that.
No, I mean, it is tough that we're not teaching, the church isn't teaching these things, and we're allowing, and that's the problem, is that we're so many parents today, like way back in the day, you didn't have both parents working. You had
Right.
the dad providing, the mom teaching, raising the boys or the girls up, teaching them what's right and wrong, right? Now in our society, it's pretty much, hey, both parents go to work, have the state teach your children. And that's the problem. They teach, like the statistics is most students that are Christian that graduate high school and go to college, like 70% of professing Christians, 70% of them leave the faith after college.
Right.
You know, and then because they're not founded, they don't have a good foundation on the Bible. They've never read the Bible. I mean, it's pretty much you go to church on Sunday and that's it. There's no, let's go through the book of Romans and let's systematically go through the gospel and what Paul's presenting. What's justification and what's salvation. Like, you don't talk about these things. You don't. The Bible is all about talking about, be ready to give an answer to those who, question you, to the hope that's within inside you. Be ready. And that's what apologetics, like that word apologia, literally means to give an answer. And we're supposed to be ready to give an answer to anybody that asks. So it doesn't matter if it's an atheist that wants to talk about, evolution, we should be able to do that. But the problem is nowadays is you got both parents going to work, the kids going to the public school. And what's crazy is in where I live, my wife has a friend and her daughters just went to kindergarten this year, she turned 5, and she got a letter sent home asking the mom, is it okay for her daughter that's 5 years old in kindergarten to be in the sex class about teaching sexuality, teaching transgender, teaching about gay, homosexuality, and all these things to a 5-year-old girl.
Wow.
And how do you feel? Like, do you feel like you're a boy or a girl? They start talking about this stuff. And right now, she's able to opt out of it. But there's other places that it's getting to a point where you can't opt out of it. That your child has to learn these things. And they teach it to them when they're young, so it indoctrinates them. So when these kindergartners that learn this stuff, when they become high schoolers and young adults, now they're going to be flipping fairies. And then you're going to be the bigot Christian guy that says, no, I think, I'm not going to allow, I have a daughter, when she gets older, I'm not going to allow some boy to go into the changing room or the locker room with her. Boys go with boys, girls go with girls. But, like my mother-in-law, she works at a hospital down in Miami, and they have the policy where you can use any bathroom that you assign to your gender. So I can literally walk into the woman's bathroom and go use it.
Yeah. So when I like going to Starbucks and they had the big bathroom thing, a year or two ago. And it's kind of interesting. So I'd go to Starbucks and they changed their bathrooms to have just like, the men and the woman symbol on it. So you can use either one, which to me, it's just a single bathroom. So that just makes total sense anyways.
Yeah,
But if it's
fine.
But if it's a multiple bathroom, But
yeah,
then
you're going.
The interesting thing was they changed it back to men and women. But then I went to other Starbucks and it still has the single gender. But yeah, if it's a multiple, I don't.
Yeah,
think
I'm talking about like a high school.
Right.
You're talking about going to a bathroom or the women's locker room.
Yeah.
Even like Target.
They offer that choice in some schools.
Yeah, if you assign yourself as a male and you're actually a female, you can go to the men's locker room.
In schools?
In school,
really
in high
that?
Schools. Yep. In the United States of America.
Florida or?
I don't know if it's in Florida, but there are schools that do that. I mean, there are female track stars that are actually men that are running for high school like track teams.
On the men's team, you mean?
No, they're running for they're boys, but they say they're women and they run for the girls.
They really let them do that?
Yeah. And they actually dominate. Just imagine.
I mean, how could you, if you were a girl, how would you feel that that doesn't even make sense?
Yeah, I know. Not too long ago, there was a guy that's, says he's a woman that just dominated like all the heavy lifting world records.
Okay.
And then there was this girl that was a track star in high school or whatever. World like broke all the records, and it's just like
I
it's
guess
not
they're probably
fair.
using the opposite argument that girls shouldn't be allowed with boys. So, I mean, I could see. I think girls should be allowed to compete with men, but I don't see it working the other way around quite yet. But things are getting closer when it comes to track and field, especially long distance running. They think women will surpass men's times in the future.
Well, the thing is that our bodies are actually designed differently. Like men's like like there's something like our muscle fibers, like they're shorter or something that men are faster, we're stronger, we're like I'm talking about like of course there's women out in the world that would dominate like that can lift double, triple than all of us here combined pretty much. But when you have a close comparison, like for example, like the best tennis player woman in the world is like Serena Williams or whatever her name is,
or one of the best.
Yeah. If she played the number one male tennis player, she would be destroyed. Just like when there was, what was her name? Like there was some famous woman boxer that she went and fought. Like she was the best woman boxer, knocking out everybody. She fought some random guy and got knocked out. And that's the thing. But what's terrible is when women that transition to guys and they start fighting or they start competing against actual men, they get destroyed. But when a male that's been a male for 30 years, that's went through his entire life as a male, decides he's going to be a woman and then competes in an athletic anything with a woman, they dominate. So that just goes to show you that we are different.
Oh yeah, I mean we're definitely different. I mean I'm not saying that.
No, but they say that they're not. There is no difference. Male and female is just what you feel. It's not a genetic. Like there's no such thing as a genetic male, genetic female. That's what the left teaches, and that's what they say. This is why transgender is acceptable, because you just feel that you were born, it doesn't matter if you have, a penis. That does not mean that you're a male. You feel that you're a woman, so you're a woman. But genetically, you are not a woman.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it has to do with, like you said, your upbringing, the way the women went to work in the wartime. I mean, things just really changed in our society, and it's going to be tough to get back to traditional values when you're, you're given, so many things, and then to take it away, it's going to be difficult. I lucked out with my son and his brother. Their mom didn't work, so they were able to really she was able to share a lot of great little values with them that they've adopted. But it's difficult to get by on a single family income as well anymore.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's the wages haven't went up, and inflation has, and wages haven't matched inflation. So but I mean, we have a lot of Christians, but you're right. They're like, Sunday only Christians. It's not the mom staying home during the week to teach and I'll go on Sunday. It's
I mean, you were a Christian, like your parents are Christian, right?
I mean, they have Christian values, and
Like, did you
my
go to
dad
church growing up?
never.
Oh, okay.
No, my mom took me to a kids Bible study thing once, and I don't remember anything bad happening or anything like that. But I remember my mom asked me afterwards. I think I would have been 6 years old. It was just like one of those like vocational Bible studies during the summer, I think.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Do you want to go again?" I'm like, "Nah." So I never had to go to church again. That
Mhm.
was like the only church experience I had. But my mom's pretty liberal and my dad's very conservative.
Wow. I mean, like what I know, like for example, like my wife, like she grew up in the church. Her mom, you know, everything like church related. I mean, my wife like so much her whole life pretty much. But they never read the Bible together as a family. They never like like what we do. We talk about theology. We talk about, oh, I see this, but then we have somebody else that doesn't see that, so we can talk about it. We can, open things up that, most people don't talk about, which are good. You should have these conversations, but most families don't do that.
Yeah, are you still with us, Stacy?
Yes.
Did you grow up in the church?
No.
When did you first start attending church? About how old were you?
Um, Actually, I've kind of always went, but I just went with my neighbors.
Gotcha. But how old were you when you first started going, like 13 or?
Oh no, I was in Sunday school. I would go with my next door neighbor. He would take me, and so I was probably about 7 or 8.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
I mean, how do you remember being church growing up? I mean, do you see times changing within the church, or do you see it still kind of similar to when you were a kid?
Well, they were always pretty judgmental, and that's the reason why after I became an adult, I kind of stayed away from church because Christians can be real meanies.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, they are. It seems like they're more, Zach was right. They are more judgmental, or,
but
maybe it
but
wasn't you saying that, Zach, but the paper assignment.
Yeah.
however, there's two camps of Christians. One's the judgmental one, but wants to err on the side of truth, and the other camp is the more liberal one, and they want to err on the side of compassion.
Right.
So I'm learning that now.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. Like I go to one church very strict, don't allow anything. And then, but they only have like 10 members, if that. And
The other church that I had left,
mhm.
I still get email messages from them sometimes because they just send it out to all the members.
Right.
And apparently they decided that they were going to change the code on the door, and only the
Mhm.
elders themselves were going to have it. And some of these elders don't even show up for church except on Sundays, so they're not actively engaged in any kind of ministry or anything. But those are the only ones that are allowed to have the code. So they treat
Right.
uh, their own people as thieves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting society. I definitely remember just things being a lot different in the 70s and early 80s, people just sharing and not being, it just seems lawsuits and media really change things. The lawyer society, definitely media's been I remember watching just like a little documentary, and like the first war movies started coming back, how they would go to the movie theater and they get little like war clips. Do you guys remember that, seeing stuff like that they would go to the movie theaters to get their news.
Hmm.
Did you guys did? Because
No, I
before,
don't remember.
you know,
I don't
yeah, so they would
remember.
get like they would get their news by going to like before the movie would show. They would get little news clips of like the war, and the
Oh,
very first time that they showed someone dying in the movie theaters, you know, people were just crying. And you know, now you got 5-year-olds playing Call of Duty that, you know, seeing just as something as graphic, if not more graphic, you know. And
Talk about Grand Theft Auto. You ever play that game? I used to play that. I used to play that game all the time. That game is so bad.
I mean, our morals and our judgment have been, you know, like Matthew was saying, you know, I think he calls it agenda, and I know a lot of conspiracy theories, and I know Stacy's brought that up before as well. I can't remember who you said wrote that thing. That's all coming true, Stacy. You've said a few times.
what is it now?
You've said a few times, like, if you read this, it's like all coming true. I can't remember what
Yeah,
book
the
that
letter
was.
of Albert Pike.
Yeah, Albert Pike.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's where, you know, what, and was the letter of Albert Pike just to defeat Christianity, or what was the main goal?
Bring in Luciferianism. But first, the atheist will have to be in power, and then everyone will see how cruel they are, and then they'll come in with their knowledge
Gotcha.
and save the day.
It's kind of weird, you know. You wouldn't think that they would believe full preterism if that's their goal. You know, because it seems like Satan would have been destroyed, whether he was, you know, whether you believe whatever he was or wasn't, that entity, whatever it is or isn't, was destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if you're trying to build, but I mean, all kinds of false things get built up, I guess.
I mean, I know what Don Preston says. He's like, what does he say? He says that, you know, like Hitler, like for example, Hitler was like the supreme, you know, white supremacist, pretty much, like the leader of it, right? So let's just say, you know, he's the Satan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there still white supremacists today?
For sure.
So like what Don Preston says, and I don't 100% agree with it, but what he'll say is you have, you know, the devil, aka Hitler,
Right.
dead, but his effects and what he taught is still happening.
Yeah, I mean, definitely makes a lot of sense, especially if you have people believing. I mean, even today, you see people, you know, with their music choices or straight out professing, you know, to worship Satan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, they'd rather worship Satan than the God of the Bible. You know, whether it be, you know, the God of the Bible, you are encouraged to make restrictive choices, whether that's sexuality, drinking, moderation, or whatever. You know, and they feel that the Bible is restricting those urges or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
But it's like also like my
Did you get a
wife
grade on
always
your
says,
paper? Did you get a grade on your paper yet?
yeah, sure. Let's see what I got. I always do bad when it comes to the citing. Okay, you're supposed to like cite their resources and stuff.
mm-hmm. I was
I
never
always,
good at that either.
I know, I hate them. I really do. I'm like, how does it go? Do you put it in italics or whatever? I'm just like, all right, forget it. At least I'm quoting it, you know. I got a essay number 2. Oh my God. My teacher already graded my last essay. Oh my God, I got an A in the class. Cool. All right.
Mhm.
I got an 88, so a high B.
Okay.
Did he
When I
leave
look
any
at,
comments at all, or
oh yeah, they filled the thing up.
did they?
This is what he says. He says, Zachary, good job covering the prompt topics with the inside out approach. See, so like the approach was like what the textbook was this in and out approach. So it's pretty much like what the main thing is, like when somebody brings an argument, like for example, the first premise was that people may say that Christians are intolerant and judgmental, and in fact this can be true. Many young people see religious as as dictatorial, intolerant, you know, and all that type of stuff, of doom and gloom. So like you kind of agree with that. Like, yes, there are a lot of intolerant Christians that even go way too extreme. And, you know, I actually quoted Steven Anderson. I said, Pastor Steven Anderson made a video after a horrific shooting that happened at a gay bar in Orlando, Florida, saying, there are 50 less sodomites in the world and that they should be all killed anyways.
Did he really say that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have the video here, right here.
Oh, I gotcha.
And my teacher even said, very good examples affirming some valid points in your friend's view. So, like, because it's true, like, there's so in this
He called
approach.
Steven Anderson your friend.
No, so the thesis was you have a friend, a secular friend that's,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
you know, so you're
gotcha.
writing an essay to your friend trying to persuade, or to not persuade, but to kind of address two questions that they have, that Christians seem to be intolerant and judgmental. And
That's a
then
very practical assignment.
what?
Yeah.
That's a very practical assignment.
Oh no,
Kudos.
I love it.
Kudos to your professor for doing that.
Yeah, and then the other question is a secular. It says that Christian sexual ethics, which seem to suppress basic human desires and their freedom to live fulfilled lives. So, you know, that was the other question that I had. So the topic was, you know, the main thing was to work inside their argument. So pretty much you're agreeing with them, but then the objective goal for the Christian apologists is to take them to the furthest, to the consistent lens. So when somebody, you know, what I wrote here was that, you know, Christian, you know, people want to be like, oh, well, you know, you're suppressing your freedom and things like that, which is true. Christians do. You know, Christians teach that you should be married and not sleep around with a bunch of people. That you should be married to one woman.
I think, you know, we should look at that because the freedom is a big thing, right? You know, they want the freedom to do this or freedom to do that. But with Christianity, the true freedom that you have is peace of mind freedom. You know, whether, you know, you don't have those spiritual attacks, whether it's through your finances or having several different relationships and having to lie and trying to cover this ground or that ground, or, you know, feeling bad about an abortion. If you don't do those things, then you have that freedom of peace of mind, which you don't get with the freedom of rebellion. You know, how do we encourage people to see that there is freedom in Christ, but it's a different type of freedom. It's freedom of living a quality life. You know what I mean?
My wife always says, like, about the commandments, especially like the Old Testament commandments, that that they're still applicable in the sense that, like, it teaches you very good things. Like, for example, the Shabbat. she'll be like that a person that works 7 days a week with no rest is more prone to a lot of physical ailments, that they might be too overstressed, that there's something that could be happening in the physical body, the way that, and other things that, my wife always talks about, like, like, for example, like, sleeping around with a bunch of people or being gay. My wife has, she's a nurse, and she's never had every gay person that she's ever had as a patient, every single one of them, HIV. So that lifestyle seems to not promote, but it seems to it leads more to, those types of diseases, and not just for, homosexuals, but also for heterosexuals that just sleep around with a bunch of people. You're more prone to catching diseases and things like that, which is not actually beneficial for your health.
Right. So it's more than just there are consequences to these rebellion urges, or whatever you want to call them. What about, just like someone that lies and cheats, you're going to have consequences, whether it be jail or dealing with the court system, or just having someone mad at you, or they might get revenge on you. Or when you're honest, generally you're not going to have that retribution from people. They're going to respect honesty, whether they're morally corrupt or not. You know what I mean? Even someone that lies a lot is going to respect someone that is honest compared to someone that lies and cheats. So you have this freedom in choosing God's ways are better, that give you true freedom, even though we define freedom as rebellion. I think we're all about this freedom society, and we're really redefining what freedom is and what freedom really means. And if we can get people to see that there is freedom in Christ by choosing these restrictive ways of living, they would say that it's a better freedom than getting these ailments or these consequences that come with making unwise choices or unrighteous choices.
Yeah, definitely agreed. That's some of the freedom that you have, that Christ has set you free from these things. And then, just like getting it back to like this essay thing with this in and out approach, like everybody has some type of limit in a sense. So you might want to say that Christians restrict our sexuality, say, oh, you need to be married to one woman and, be faithful to that one woman or whatever. You shouldn't be so, restrictive. But to that person, you can say, okay, well, do you sleep with men? Like, oh, no. Oh, why not? Why restrict yourself? They have some type of standard or limit that they choose. And then even if you want to go talk to the craziest person in the world, like that, that's a transsexual and sleeps with, boys and girls, does whatever. Well, why do you stop there? Why don't you sleep with animals? Oh, well, that's just disgusting. So that everybody has a limit. Everybody has a standard and a worldview that they see the world in. And so that's what this whole assignment was to kind of like work with inside their own framework and then bring it out to its final conclusion and show that the only consistent argument which is truly sound is a Christian worldview, and to try to show them that Christianity is the way.
Be right back. I might grab
But
a little snack.
A little snack?
Something. I'm not sure what.
He used up a lot of sugar.
Hmm.
Grain.
Oh man, my dinner tonight was so dang.
Would
It
you
was
have?
me and my wife's 4-year anniversary was yesterday.
Ooh.
Our wedding anniversary. So
Mhm.
we didn't go out yesterday because we didn't have a babysitter, but her mom came today and watched the 2 kids, and we were able to go to a place called, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Benihana or
Yeah.
Benihana.
Boy, that's
Yeah,
fancy. Did they cook it in front of you?
yeah. We
Did they
had
pop it in
the
your mouth?
I know.
Sometimes he'll say, "Open your mouth," and
Yeah,
then he'll
I've
actually.
seen that. Yeah,
His name is so good. He pops it
it,
in your mouth.
it was funny because there was because you sit with like other people, you're not just the only ones, and the family that was sitting there had a 2-year-old, and the guy made a Mickey Mouse with the rice. It was so cool. The little
I've seen
kid.
one guy. He made a volcano with the rice,
Oh yeah, they do. Everybody does.
and
They do it with the onions.
and and one that they do at the Mexican restaurant here at the hibachi lunch is he made the rice in the shape of a heart,
And it beats it.
spatula under it. And he made the heart
Yeah.
beat, and then
Yeah,
he cut the heart, and then he said, "You broke my heart."
yeah. No, because we told him that it was our anniversary, so he did that, and it was like, oh, for the 2 anniversary people, or whatever. But yeah, I got the filet mignon and this chicken.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good, man.
I know it was tender, wasn't it?
Oh, I got it cooked medium rare. Oh, so tender. It was dang. And then they give you shrimp. I ate the shrimp, but I mean, shrimp is like, you eat shrimp?
Yeah, I don't normally eat it.
It's like rubbery. I don't know.
I guess so a little. Yeah.
I don't really like it too
Which
much.
anniversary was it for you? How far along?
4 years.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yep. 4
And
years,
how
2
how old's
children.
so how old are your kids now?
John will be 3 in December, and my daughter's literally 3 weeks old.
Wow, 3 weeks. 3
Yeah,
and 3.
she is so, you know, she's so small. I mean, she's a big baby for a 3-week-old, but I mean, it's just
How's she doing?
she's doing good. I mean, sometimes she'll get a little gassy, but that's the only problem I guess that we're having.
She's building up the proper population of bacteria in her
Yeah,
digestive tract.
I mean, all she does is drink breast milk, so I mean, she's drinking the best stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be affected by what my wife eats that day. Like my wife noticed, like if she eats anything that has too much dairy, that she'll get too gassy or something. So
Mm-hmm.
she'd stop eating cheese and milk and all that kind of stuff. Try to see something, because you can tell she's like in pain sometimes because like the way she like turns her body, you know. But I mean, but other than that, she's good. She sleeps really good. I mean, she's nothing like my son. But the problem with my son was he didn't eat good because he had something called a tongue tie, where like underneath your tongue, if you lift it up, like there's like some extra skin that's like attached to it that made it like he couldn't stick his tongue out far enough. And we didn't know that till he was like 2 months old or whatever, or like well after he was like, at some period in time, I forget. So we had to like take him to the doctors, and they had to like cut it to make him be able to latch better. Because in the beginning he wasn't eating enough. He was always on my wife, feeding, but he just didn't extract enough of the milk to get full. So he doesn't sleep like, my daughter sleeps way better than he did. So I mean, she'll sleep
Didn't
6
you have to
hours a
drive
night.
him around and stuff?
Yeah, not when he was like an infant, but
Yeah.
there were times, when he's like, we just drove around for hours. It feels like. I remember Ezra told me that too, that he would take his children in the truck and just have to drive around for them to fall asleep sometimes. It's true. It's soothing. I remember I used to love falling asleep in the car.
I couldn't stay awake.
What, you can't stay awake, you said?
No, I couldn't stay awake when I was little and being in the car.
Well, you always fell asleep?
Especially on the long drives. One of my grandmothers. I couldn't stay awake. They'd get mad at me and they'd say, you need to stay awake so you can see how to get there, because eventually you'll be driving.
How funny.
So long.
Yeah. But to change the topic, have you guys seen what the Jews did like a month ago?
No. I've been out of the
About
world.
the sacrifice or whatever? Or?
Yeah, for the 70 nations or something.
I didn't see how that all played out. I remember mentioning it.
Yeah, they went on somewhere and it was a sacrifice for the 70 nations because, they believe that the temple is for the whole world. It's not just for them. It's to have every nation come and worship God. So they performed a sacrifice. They took a lamb, they slit its throat, and then they put it on like a wooden thing and just burnt it.
I show they got some video here on 70 Nations Initiative perform ritual sacrifice ahead of Jewish year about a week ago.
Yeah, that's it.
Some people would say that just killing an animal and not eating the meat or doing anything with it, just killing is a sin.
Yeah, I showed they're burning it there on top of like a
something.
Like, yeah. I don't know if it's truly an altar that they're burning it on, but
yeah, they were just doing a burnt offering. It wasn't like an altar, nothing, but
yeah.
The thing is, it's like there's a lot of people on the internet saying like, "This is it, the end of the world."
I see it got 54 thumbs up and 25 thumbs down, so it's quite a few thumbs up and thumbs down. It only has 1,600 views though.
Yeah, I see a lot of people. They were just like showing how like they're doing it wrong because Jesus is the final sacrifice.
Right. Yeah,
But
it looks like it's a select minority group. I see the same people that were there in some of the other videos that I saw before. So
yeah,
it looks like it's I don't know if that's the whole Jewish nation behind that or more.
No, there's like a little sect of Judaism that's for the rebuilding of the temple. It's not all the Jews in the world, or all the Jews in Jerusalem, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a particular sect, which is true in Judaism. I would say, yeah, if I was Jewish, like really Jewish, I would say, heck yeah, we need to build this thing.
I mean, they still want Jesus to come back, which is just the weirdest thing. It's like, how did they not recognize the Messiah?
Yeah. Well, I can understand why. They, first of all, they don't even really believe the Bible. Because, even Jesus says, if you would believe Moses, you would believe in me, but you don't believe in Moses.
I mean, even the Old Testament has enough prophecy of the Messiah that you would have thought they would recognize him.
I know, but the thing is they read it through the lens of the rabbis.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Crazy.
And through those lenses, it's like, that's how you're going to see it. You're going to see it through how do you interpret, Daniel chapter 7, where it says that the Son of Man ascended to the Ancient of Days. Who's the Son of Man? Oh, well, we interpreted this. Or who's Isaiah 53 talking about? Oh, that's about the nation of Israel. Okay.
Yeah, it's a crazy world.
Yeah. I'm probably gonna hit the hay. I gotta wake up early tomorrow.
Yeah, it's getting kind of late too.
All right,
Yeah, it's when it was at 12:40 almost. Jeez.
After
Well, it was
after
fun.
after tonight, everyone will listen to this video and they'll realize that the Bible's the way, world peace is around the corner, and we've solved all the issues.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it.
All
All right, guys.
Good night, guys.
Your brothers.
Love you.
All right, love you guys.
All right, night, Albert.